I'm Peg Bowden. I live in southern Arizona, close to the US-Mexico border. Actually, I've been here since 2002. Quite by accident, I found out about a group called the Samaritans, who do desert searches and really respond to the crisis in the desert. So I went to a meeting. I was blown away by 120 people showing up at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning, mostly grandmothers and grandfathers, senior citizens. And so I began going on desert searches. I began going down to Mexico to an aid station. And because I'm a nurse, the aid station does medical care and first aid mainly. And decided I would commit to 1 year of really trying to understand the immigration crisis. And this was 2010, 2011 now. I fell in love with the people that I was serving. I would serve breakfast. I would hand out clothes. I would tend their wounds and listen to their stories. I was so moved by the stories, I decided to write a book. Actually, I was writing a blog about it all and was encouraged to write a book. Since Trump was elected, things have changed at the Comedor. Comedor means dining room. I guess what's different is most of the people, at least half or more, have lived in the United States most of their lives. In other words, they were not migrants coming up from Guatemala, El Salvador, southern Mexico. I met a man from Yonkers, New York, who, well, I heard this guy speaking English with a New York accent, and he didn't really look like a migrant. So I walked over to him. I said, "You speak such perfect English." And he said, "Well, I'm from Yonkers." And it turns out he's a sous chef in a fancy restaurant, and they did a sweep of his restaurant. The next thing he knew, he was in Mexico. Been here since he was a baby. Has an excellent job. He was in junior college, learning culinary arts. Parents are there, family there. This guy was in shock. I would say he was in his late 20s. He was taken from Yonkers. He was taken to a detention center in Arizona. He spent a month in prison here in Arizona in one of the detention centers. And the Homeland Security confiscated his cell phone, his ID, his money, his clothes. He didn't get any of that back. So, and then they just dumped him into Nogales. So he had no ID, no money, no nothing. And that is a common story. I asked this guy if he was a DACA student, and he said, no. He said, yes, I had a good job. I was making good money. I have skills. He says, I've never broken the law. He says, I've never gotten a speeding ticket. No DUIs, none of that. I think the racism is more overt right now. I mean, I live in Arizona. Arizona is a red state. A lot of people don't like people of color, particularly Latinos in Arizona. That's just a fact. And so they're more out there. There are more militia men in the deserts. Many of my Samaritan colleagues have had encounters with, young men and older men in camouflage outfits marching around the desert claiming ISIS is about to climb the wall and invade our desert, and, just full of these, fantastic stories that have no basis in reality. The Samaritans go out on desert searches almost every day of the week. They have never felt threatened. The only time they felt threatened are by Border Patrol agents or the militia. They have never felt threatened by a lost migrant or even a group of migrants. I'm a grandmother. I walk down to Mexico every week with a group. I know the peddlers that I meet along the way. I know the newspaper guys. I know the people who are trying to sell me popsicles. Then I get to the Comodore, and there's 50 or 60 young men there. I probably hear more gracias, thank yous in Mexico, and God bless yous in Mexico than I ever do in the United States from anyone. They're a gracious people. Many of the migrants are ashamed that they're asking for help, particularly the ones from the US who have been picked up and have really never had to ask for anything in their lives. And now they're stripped of everything. There are a larger number now from Central America, meaning Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. They are fleeing poverty. They're fleeing violence in their communities. They're fleeing corruption. Many of them had good jobs, but they were being extorted for large amounts of money by mafias. Their families feel threatened. They feel they have no other option. And I don't know a lot about that system other than it costs a lot of money. You've got to have connections, and it can be 10 to 15 years before you are issued a visa to enter our country. It's just about impossible unless you're, a rocket scientist or a highly skilled physician. For some reason, those folks seem to be able to fast track getting into our country. It's a simple answer, but it's not an answer that is going to work. I mean, first of all, we already have 700 miles of wall, and migrants are still, coming to our country. They're going around the wall, under the wall, over the wall. The wall is probably the biggest waste of taxpayers' money in my lifetime. The reason the death toll is higher than it has been in the past is the wall has forced people to cross into the desert at more remote places. So there's a higher likelihood they're going to get lost or they're going to die. So we built a wall that kills poor people. That's the way I see it. We built a wall to keep out poor people. We are a country that we're afraid. I don't know what the fear is about, but we have a fear of people of color. And I could go into, what's going on with African Americans and the police. And, we've got these brown, lovely people from our neighbors to the south. In some ways, I think it's like, our skewed version of genocide. It's not like we're doing genocide like, during the Holocaust, etc., but we built a wall that forces people to go in remote parts of the desert, where there is a high likelihood they will die. Or we pick up people in this country who are undocumented, and we ship them back into the hellhole they came from, which is Central America and southern Mexico, where they can't survive, and there's a good chance they're going to die. That sounds like genocide. This is what the wall says. It says, we're better than you. We don't want you. Stay out of our gated community. We're white supremacists. We're a white community. We are a white country. You threaten us. So stay out. It's a very negative image to me, and I guess I have some strong feelings about it. First of all, we need to fast track all those DACA students so they don't have to fear getting kicked out of the country. And by that I mean they need a green card and they need a fast track towards citizenship if that is indeed what they want. With the 11 million, I think we need to issue work visas and also an easier track towards citizenship if that's indeed what they want. But I've met a lot of undocumented people who don't want to give up their Mexican citizenship. They love their village. They cannot survive there now, but they would like to travel safely back and forth where they don't risk their life in our desert. They would like to work here in our orchards, and a work visa would accomplish that. I also think we need to decriminalize illicit drugs. I am a proponent of pouring the money into rehabilitation, detox centers, whatever it takes for the addiction problems of our country, because we're the customer here. It's a business arrangement that's illegal. Perhaps if it was legal, I think a lot of the crime element would disappear.